Hi everyone, this is Rachel with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do my first book haul of 2021. And this is going to be a combination of books that I received for review, all genres, so horror, thriller, science fiction, and fantasy, as well as some books that I received for Christmas. Hopefully that's something you're interested in watching. I'm going to have timestamps down below if you want to skip over a section, because some people are weird about watching other people haul gifts, so if you're not into that, you can avoid leaving the thumbs down and just skip over that section. All that being said, before I get started, I do want to mention the fact that my background is probably different than what you've seen in the past. Depending on my video schedule, this is probably the first video you'll see with these bookshelves. I rearranged some things over Christmas, and this is going to be one of my filming locations. You're still going to see me in the front room for some videos, but I just really want to mix it up because a lot of people have said that often my thumbnails all look the same, and so I'm trying to give you a little bit more variety. So sometimes I'll be by the window, sometimes I'll be on the couch, and sometimes I'll be in here by my bookshelves. Let me know what you think, and of course I'm sure these books are going to move around, but this is how I have it set up at the moment. All that being said, let's actually get into the book haul. First, I want to start with the books that I received for review that I haven't actually reviewed here on the channel yet. So the first one I have here is from Minotaur Books, and that is The Lost Village by Camilla Stein, which is about a village where all the people just disappeared one day back in, I believe, the 50s, and now there's a woman who is related to one of the people that disappeared that is coming in with a film crew to try to investigate what is happening. This was one of my most anticipated thrillers of the year, and so I was so excited because the day that video went live, this arrived in the mail. I did request it, and I have already read it, but I'm going to be mean and make you wait for my final thoughts. It was a lot slower paced than I thought, so keep that in mind if you're trying to decide whether or not to pre-order it, but it was interesting. I'll make you wait. I'm going to be mean. Speaking of books from my most anticipated list, I also received one of my science fiction ones, and that is Doors Asleep by Tim Pratt. He, of course, is the author who wrote one of my all-time favorite space operas, which is the Axiom trilogy, and now he's back with a standalone that is about a man that every time he falls asleep and wakes up, he finds himself in a different multiverse. I love multiverse stories, and in this one, which I have read already, basically sometimes he wakes up in a multiverse that is fantastic, and so he tries to spend more time there, and sometimes it's not great, and then he is rushing to force himself to go back to sleep. I love the variety of the worlds in this story, and again, I will make you wait for my longer thoughts. Now, next I have one that I have not yet read, and that is Skyward Inn by Isla Whitley. This is a science fiction book that came from Rebellion Publishing. This showed up at my door unsolicited, but I'm definitely interested. The cover is beautiful. This, of course, is not the final cover because this is not the title on the book, but an advanced reader copy. And my understanding is that it's a piece of literary science fiction, so I expect it to be quite slow. It follows a group of people that are coming together at this inn before the beginning of the war and sharing stories. So again, I don't expect any action in this book, but hopefully it's just a really good exploration of ideas, and I am finding myself enjoying different kinds of science fiction stories lately, so I'm hoping that this one will scratch that literary itch, which sometimes really works for me with sci-fi, so stay tuned. Next is another one I have not yet read, and that is Infernal by Mark DeJagger, and this is another one sent by Rebellion Publishing unsolicited. This follows a man who wakes up in a fantasy world with no memory, and I'm a sucker for that premise because I have read fantasy books with that premise so many times, but it just never gets old. So I'm definitely intrigued by this one. It's described as grimdark fantasy, which is definitely the kind of fantasy I tend to prefer, is that darker style, but it's also described as being humorous, and sometimes that can be hit or miss for me. So I do have to try this one out, and I will review it if it's my cup of tea. So you'll find out if it was something that really grabbed my attention if I have a review coming for this. Finally, I have two short story collections to show you, and I mentioned this in a previous video, but this year I've gotten really picky when it comes to accepting short story collections for review. I used to love the format, but honestly, lately I've been struggling with it. I just find that the stories are often unsatisfyingly short, or just the format doesn't work for me. The narrative structure just feels a little bit stilted, and so I've pretty much made a policy that I say no to 99% of the requests I get to review these. So the fact that I said yes to these two really say a lot to the quality of their work. And the first one I want to talk about is Local Haunts. This was curated and edited by Regina St. Clair, who has her own channel, so I'll try to remember to link that down below. But this is a collection of stories by other booktubers, specifically horror booktubers. And so many of my favorite people are in this collection: Cameron Chaney, Marie McWilliams, as well as Jason White, and so many others. And so when I got the opportunity to receive a copy, I definitely said yes. I am going to be reviewing this. I have already read most of the stories, and what I'm going to do is talk about my favorites, because there are some really fun stories in this collection, and I definitely want to highlight those stories and the booktubers who created them. So this is a lot of fun, just a really great project. And as you're recording this, I believe there is another collection coming out based around winter horror, and that sounds fantastic. And I also have a copy of Places We Fear to Tread, which is edited by Burrell and Sullivan. They, of course, are the people behind Cemetery Gates, which is one of my favorite indie presses. And I accepted this one because I've read their collections before, and they're really good. I always find stories that I enjoy. And sure enough, I'm having the same experience reading through this one right now. And this collection has some fantastic names in it, including Chad Lutzke, who is one of my favorites, as well as a lot of other voices that were new to me. And I really like that they brought some diversity into the collection with some, smaller people, some people from different nations, and just really like what they brought together here. The premise behind the collection is that it's all about places that were perhaps inspired by real life fears, and there's a good variety here. Really enjoying it, and I will keep you posted when I'm all finished up. Now I'm going to talk about books that I have already reviewed on my channel but have not yet hauled, so I'm going to keep the talks about these books a little bit shorter. The first one I want to mention is The Visitor by Sergio Gomez. He is the author who wrote Camp Slaughter, which is one of my favorite slasher books, and I gratefully accepted this arc for review because I really like Christmas horror. This one is set in a diner where a group of people are getting together during a blizzard when a strange visitor shows up, and if you can kind of see in the cover, it's possibly an alien. I really like sci-fi horror, and so I was very excited to receive a copy of this book, and it was fun for sure. I'll be definitely talking about it next year in my horror recommendations for the new holiday season. After that, I have to talk about The Messy Man by Chris Sorensen. This is the third and final book in the Messy Man trilogy, and I was incredibly grateful for the author for sending me a copy of this. Again, I've already reviewed it, but I do want to point out the fact that little old me was blurbed on the front of this book. So it says, Chris Sorensen is the only horror author to make me love not one but two haunted house stories. And I gotta say, I was just so humbled to be asked to blurb a cover. It's a first time for me, and wow, it was so amazing to get this in the mail. It goes beautifully with the first two books. They just are incredible. I believe he does his own cover art, and often that's a huge mistake when indie authors do that, but once again, he proves to be the exception because these books are fantastic. And I definitely recommend this series, but I do recommend starting back at the beginning with The Nightmare Room. I also received a copy of The Children of the Red Peak by Craig DeLuey. This came out from Orbit, and I received a copy from the author's publicist. And this is one that I liked, but I would have loved more if I was into cult horror. Essentially, it's about a group of people in a cult that go up to a mountain, something happens, they all disappear except for a group of children, and now years later they're meeting again as adults to find out what happened. If you really like books about cults, you will probably love this one. I definitely think that it will appeal to anyone who just finds the topic fascinating. Next, from Angry Robot Books, we have Night Terrors by Tim Wagner. This is technically a piece of dark fantasy, but one that I think that will appeal to readers like myself that read a lot more horror, because the book is centered around a detective who teams up with his imaginary clown from his dreams, and they are basically forced to keep the monsters from the dream world from bleeding into our own reality. It's really fun, and the clown in this is basically the reason to read it. He is so funny and very Pennywise-esque, and that just made it so much fun to read. We also have The Chimera Code by Wayne Santos. This is one I received from Rebellion Books, and this is a cyberpunk sci-fi fantasy that follows a group of people that are trying to do a heist. And this is a book that reminded me that I don't always like sci-fi fantasy. I like fantasy and I like sci-fi, but I'm very particular when it comes to mixing them. But if you're someone that likes heist stories, if you like stories involving AI and magicians and mages, and just when they all get blended together, this one definitely was a lot of fun, and it was pretty fast paced, so that one might be one that you'll enjoy a little bit more than I did. We also have No Feck Gloss by Essa Hansen, which is an arc I received from Orbit Books. This is a space opera following a young boy whose planet is destroyed right at the beginning of the story, and he is picked up by a group of salvagers that take him in and become his found family. It's kind of a classic setup to a space opera, but this one was good because it was really dark, and I definitely enjoyed the monsters in this one. I thought they were really imaginative. I believe it's the beginning of a series, so I'll have to decide if I'll continue on with the later books. But yeah, this one was fun, and if you're looking for a good space opera, this is a good one to try out. Finally, for review copies, I want to talk about The Phlebotomist by Chris Pantier, and this is another one I received from Angry Robot Books. This is set in a dystopian future where there is a need for blood, and because of that, the citizens are being asked to participate in mandatory blood draws, and this spirals into a crazy thriller plot that I don't want to get into here. I have again already reviewed this. Gotta say that the cover is phenomenal. It is adorable and pink and just really weird, and I think it fits the book really well. So great job to Angry Robot Books. I think they were one of the best publishers in 2020 when it comes to cover art. And yeah, this one was, just really unique. Nothing like I've read before. And finally, I want to share the books that I've received for Christmas. If you're not interested in seeing this section, feel free to skip over to the end. But I'm incredibly grateful for my online friends and subscribers that decided to send me gifts. It really did make my holiday season really special. We were in lockdown here, and I didn't get to see my family members, so it was just such a wonderful treat. Who doesn't love getting books in the mail? So the first one I want to show you is from a subscriber, Eris. Thank you so much. And he sent me, or she, I should say, I actually don't know, sent me a copy of Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabashik Rice. If you watched my end of the year, best of the year videos, which I hope you did, you would have noticed that this book was among these because this is a book I read right at the end of the year and absolutely loved. It's a quiet, literary science fiction book set on a reserve, and it's a post-apocalyptic story, but it's so intimate because you only get to see what is happening to the people there. It is a story of family and community, and it's suspenseful, and I am just constantly thinking about this book. Even though I just read it, I want to reread it again, and yeah, love it so much. And I was shocked getting to actually see the physical copy, because I read it as an ebook on Scribd, that it is a beautiful piece of book publishing, because the cover and everything, it's got the nice little flaps, and is just a really nice book. And again, one I'm definitely going to reread, which is the reason I had it on my wish list, is because I could honestly reread this book right now. I love it so much, and I just keep thinking about the ending. So thank you so much. This was a wonderful, very generous surprise. Next, I have my dear friend Mike, who generously sent me a book that is very fitting, and that is The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. This is the second book in the Dandelion Dynasty series, and it's quite fitting because last year we both read the first book, Grace of Kings, and I did go on to read this one. He still needs to read this one though, and I happen to think that 2021 is a great time for him to catch up on this series. And even though this book is ridiculously chunky, I am very tempted to reread it with him, so that might be happening. Sending me books is always a very good motivational way to get me to pick up something. And yeah, I love this series. Of course, it is an epic fantasy series inspired by the Chinese dynasties of old, and again, a book I cannot stop thinking about. Literally want to reread in preparation for the third book coming out, even though it is a beast. I had no idea how physically big the second book was, because I know the first book is big, but this one's bigger. Now, the next book came from another online friend of mine, Shelley. Thank you so much. She sent me a copy of Midnight Rain by James Newman, which, if you, again, watch my videos, you probably know that this was one of my favorite thrillers of 2020. It, of course, is a backlist title, and I loved it. In my opinion, it is a hidden gem. It is this dark coming-of-age story about this boy who sees something that he shouldn't, and he really does become an adult through the actions of what happens and the aftermath and the consequences of what he does and does not do. And oh my goodness, again, This is one I have to reread, could probably reread this year, and I just think that it's such a good book. I really hope more people pick it up, and I'm incredibly grateful for Shelley for treating me and sending me this book as a surprise, because again, it's one that I will definitely revisit, and I'm grateful to have my own copy so I can pick it up at my shelf at any time and just dive back in. Finally, I have a book from a new subscriber, Helen, and feel free to leave a comment down below so I can thank you personally. I was incredibly happy and surprised to receive, again, one of my favorite books from last year. That is The Ghost Tree by Christina Henry. And this is one of my favorite books that was actually published in 2020. And this is a coming-of-age story that is told from a female perspective, which is so rare. And this is a book that I just found to be so comforting because it follows a lot of the narrative tropes of the horror genre, and it does it in just a really good way. I think Christina Henry is just such a good storyteller. And again, you probably are noticing a theme here. I'm a huge rereader, and I just want to immediately reread this book. So I'm very grateful to have my own copy of it. It's a beautiful cover, and yeah, one that I will definitely be revisiting in the short term. I always say that, but I hope it doesn't take me too long to get to this one as well. Last, I want to talk about the gifts that were sent from my dear black-hearted friend Sandy, who is incredibly generous, and she actually sent me a whole box of goodies, not just a book, but a few extras, so I'm going to show those first. First, she sent a necklace, which is absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to attempt to show this on camera. It is this black stone that is wrapped up in wire, and it's beautiful. I've been wearing it constantly, as well as this nice rock bracelet, and it's so comfortable. It's so easy. I don't wear tons of jewelry, but this is exactly the kind of jewelry that I love to wear. And like I said, I've literally been wearing it since Christmas. So incredibly impressed that she absolutely knows my taste without actually seeing me wear a lot of jewelry on camera. She has a really good sense of what a person would like. So these were really nice. On top of that, she sent me a beautiful bookmark from, I believe, Bookish Den, and it even has my name on the back, which is really cool. And on the front, if you can't see, it lists a whole bunch of horror authors from Joe Hill to Stephen King and Rice. And it's just so beautifully done and engraved. So I love that. And then she sent me my first ever book sleeve. I've actually never had one before, but I really should have had one for years because I am the kind of person that absolutely throws books in my purse and in my book bag all the time, and they do tend to get bent and damaged because I'm terrible like that. So I'm really grateful to have a book bag that will, actually protect my books. The design of the cover is gorgeous. I love that it's all like moons and stars and really eye-catching. And then on top of that, she still did send me one book, and not just any book, but she sent me one of my all-time favorite books in a special edition. I am incredibly grateful for how generous Sandy is. Let me be clear, I'm very aware that I have some very generous friends in my life. So the book that she sent is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, and this, as I said, is a special edition. It is a special edition that is signed and is absolutely gorgeous. I remember seeing it online and just gasping, saying, oh my goodness, that book is gorgeous. And she went along and, seeing my reaction, went and actually got me my own copy. I'm so grateful. This is such a unique gift, such a thoughtful gift. Again, one of my favorites, one I'm of course going to be rereading. I've already reread it since the first time I picked it up. And I'm going to be taking very good care of this one. It is probably going to stay in my book sleeve when I'm not using it because I am just, really in love with this copy. And the cover work is just so gorgeous. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the books that I mentioned here, and also let me know if you've received any books for Christmas. I hope you did, because it is definitely a wonderful treat. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror, thrillers, science fiction, fantasy, and I'm planning on reviewing a lot of the 2021 titles as the year goes on, so I can help you figure out which ones are worth the hype and which ones to skip over. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much. You can still help me out with a thumbs up, hitting that notification bell, and sharing this video around online. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.